Welcome to our State of the Lake Houston area virtual luncheon presented by Frost Construction Company and Shell Federal Credit Union. Thank you for joining us today. We have a great program with a panel discussion about the Lake Houston area. Before we get to the panel, let's recognize the sponsors of today's luncheon. Our co-presenting sponsors are Frost Construction Company, Inc. and Shell Federal Credit Union. We have a message from each sponsor, starting with Robert Villarreal at Frost Construction Company.
Hi, I'm Robert Villarreal. I'm a project manager with Frost Construction. I'd like to tell you a little about who we are, but before I start, I want to say thank you to the Lake Houston Area Chamber of Commerce for having us participate in the State of the Lake Houston Area Luncheon. It's an honor to be a part of this community and this event. Thank you. Frost Construction is a family-owned commercial construction management company based right here in the heart of Humble. We've been serving the greater Houston area for 2 generations. Dale Frost founded the first generation of Frost Construction in 1989. His son, Scott Frost, took the reins in 2001, ushering in the second generation of Frost Construction. We specialize in all types of commercial construction projects: new ground-up construction, add-ons, renovations, remodels, and more. If your project requires a design build, that's not a problem. We have the resources to bring your vision to life from start to finish. In such a competitive industry, why choose Frost Construction? The answer is simple. Honesty and integrity isn't just some cliche slogan hanging above our door. It's who we are. Our team has more than 150 years of combined construction experience. We have the knowledge and the wisdom to complete your project, and in 2 generations, we've proven our ability to navigate and adapt with the changes in this evolving industry. At Frost, we understand that we're not just building buildings, we're building relationships. So if you're thinking about your next commercial construction project, give us a call or come see us in Humble. Thank you.
Now, a word from Ashley Martinez at Shell Federal Credit Union.
Hello everyone, it's Ashley here with Shell Federal Credit Union. First, I would like to thank the Lake Houston Chamber for all of the amazing things they do here in the community. We are extremely proud to be part of such a great chamber. Second, I would like to briefly talk about all of the great things we have going on here at Shell FCU. For example, our auto loans. We recently dropped our rates to a low 1.74%. We offer 90-day deferred payment options, and my most favorite perk of all, an automatic $250 cash back on all auto loans financed or refinanced. Another amazing thing that we have going on here is our Win Your Purchase promotion. All transactions made during the month of March or April with your Shell FCU debit or credit card will be eligible to win the transaction total. 8 transactions will be randomly chosen to be reimbursed. So the more you use your Shell FCU debit or credit card, the more chances you'll have to win. So there you have it. We have plenty of amazing things going on here at Shell Federal Credit Union. If you would like more information on any of our products and services, feel free to visit our website at shellfcu.org. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Thank you. Take care now.
We also have gold sponsors for today's luncheon with messages. At First Financial Bank, expert lenders do not aim to just meet expectations. They aim to exceed them. As Texans begin to recover from the recent winter storm, First Financial Bank will be waiving the processing fees for all home improvement loans until March 31st, 2021. To learn more about home improvement options or to contact a dedicated lender near you, visit ffin.com/winter-storm. The Lake Houston Family YMCA is a purpose, not a place. The Y is a nonprofit organization committed to strengthening community through youth development and social responsibility. Joining the Y helps make an impact by providing resources that support academic achievement, safety around water to prevent drowning, childhood obesity, and disease prevention, and social equity. We also have 2 silver sponsors, Plain State Bank and Sullivan's Truck and Auto Collision. And our bronze sponsors are ASI Sign Systems and Rocos LLC. Thank you to all our sponsors. We would not be able to do this without your support. We would also like to recognize our new members for the month of February: PS Lightwave, OxyFresh, Northeast Houston, and Chris Parker for School Board. With our merger came new membership levels, and we will recognize some top investors joining since December: ASI Sign Systems, First Service Credit Union, Alpha Graphics Kingwood, and Atascocita Fire Department. At this point, I'll let you know that we'll be taking questions from the audience today. So please, type your questions in the comments chat section and we'll do our best to answer them. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Mark Mitchell, who will lead today's discussion.
And thank you, Terry, for the information and introduction for State of Lake Houston Luncheon today. Before we dive in, I want to remind everybody that we're going to have a few minutes at the end of the presentation to entertain questions. So put those in the chat or email Shanika. We'll probably make that available to you as well in order for you to be able to ask questions during the presentation. But we'll save the questions for the end and address those then. So with that said, we'll get started. It's been a couple of years since we've been able to do this. We had this same panel available in 2019 when we were able to all be together without masks and social distancing. So it's been a little while since we've been able to have some dialogue and conversation around this. So excited to get this group back together. I think there's going to be some robust conversation as a part of this. And we'll quickly go through the agenda in terms of what we're trying to accomplish for today. So first, I'll introduce our panelists. Again, same group that we had a couple of years ago, but 2 years worth of new knowledge. We'll talk about the 2019 and 2020 early days, the good old days, and then we'll talk about the past struggles that we've had that I think really have helped us make it through the pandemic thus far in terms of the Lake Houston community. We'll specifically get the perspective of everyone on the coronavirus and its impact to businesses in the Lake Houston area. And then we'll talk about our response collectively as a community. Again, I think leveraging back from a few years ago in terms of the natural disaster and how we all coalesced together, I think we've leveraged those relationships, and we'll talk in depth about that. We'll also talk about business adaptation and how creative businesses have become in terms of dealing with the landscape as it is right now. We'll talk about the continued growth that's going on in spite of the pandemic. And then we'll talk about emerging from the pandemic. And then most importantly, we'll talk about staying the course. So with that, would love to introduce my panelists. First on the screen, up to the left, is Jason Stubbe. And Jason's been involved in municipal government for about 14 years now. He was assistant city manager, I think, in College Station, if I'm not mistaken. And then he's been with the city of Humble for several years now, from 2013, and then 2017 he was actually named full-time city manager. So we're very appreciative of Jason and the work that we do. And he's actually the chair of economic development, and he's been the chair for, I guess, going on 2 years now. I don't know that we might have to do a do-over like we did with Terry for you, and just kind of look at 2020 as a do-over year, and then we're going to keep you around until probably 2022. So no comment there on that. And so next up is Adam McAlpine. Adam is the managing principal with McAlpine Interests. He's been with the company since 2010. Roddy was smart enough to hand over the keys to Adam here about 6 months ago, and I'm sure Adam is ecstatic about that. And then last but certainly not least is John Flournoy. John is responsible for primary development in Generation Park. It's a 4,200 acre development, probably a 2 to 3 decade build out, and John's been riding herd since 2012, has well over a couple of million square feet of projects in development and under roof right now, and lots of good things going on here in the future. And so this is the group, and of course, Mark Mitchell, Partnership Lake Houston, and I'm going to moderate with these fine gentlemen kind of pushing forward and get their perspectives on what we've really seen and what the adaptations have been, and then what we're seeing from an emergence perspective. So with that, we'll kind of dig into the good old days. And so early on, end of 2019 and early 2020, we had lots of momentum going on. We had all kinds of partnerships. We were looking at doing downtown revitalization in Humble. That's taken a little bit of a back seat. We've been partnered lockstep with Generation Park for several years now and helping them with RFIs and RFPs. The 5.8 million square feet that you see on there now is probably closer to about 6.4 million square feet. And then last but not least, we were on the tail end of helping our businesses recover from Harvey with several $100,000 of grants that were made to them in terms of economic and physical damage that they received during Harvey. And so you can see from that work that we've done, there's been a lot going on. And so, and then last but not least, and we still kind of forget about this, but right at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, actually in February, we were actually able to secure a vote from the SJRA giving us the 3-year window in terms of lake lowering to give us time to actually get the gates onto Lake Houston. And so that seems like eons ago in terms of what we were able to accomplish, but that was no small feat. And want to thank all of our elected officials and government partners and city and state agencies and local partners as well that helped us push that through in terms of that potential for us to get those lakes, get those gates on the lake. And so with that, we talked a little bit about the past struggles that we've seen here in the Lake Houston area. And so we can talk about Harvey, we can talk about the Memorial Day and Tax Day floods, we can talk about Imelda in May 10th and May 3rd of 2019. And so this area is used to figuring out how to come together. And so that's just a quick list of all the accomplishments. And it's not comprehensive, but it just gives a good indication of the partnerships that were built and how we've been able to lever a lot of those partnerships in terms of our response to the pandemic, but our different plea campaigns, our engagement of elected officials, the Army Corps, FEMA, SBA, Lake Houston area, San Jacinto River Authority board representation. And so you can see that our community really knows how to come together in terms of particular responses. And again, I think that history that we've got here is instrumental in helping us respond to the pandemic thus far. So we'll talk a little bit about the business impacts, and this is going to be my first real question to our panelists. And I'll start, Jason, with you in terms of, from a municipal perspective, what have you all seen in terms of the impact of Harvey over these past 14 months to the city of Humble?
Well, not Harvey, though we're so used to talking about Harvey. It just got replaced by a new disaster. That's all. But no, right off the bat, as early as February of last year, when COVID started, entering, our mindset, we started seeing an almost immediate decline in retail activity and therefore, our sales tax revenues. Between the months of March, April, and May of 2020, we were collectively down 17% on sales tax collections over the span of those 3 months, as high as 24% in the month of April at the height of the lockdown. That's a significant amount of money for a small town like ours that relies so much on retail and business activity. So that was the lost revenue for us, and certainly the lost revenue for businesses. Outside of that, really, there was limited impact of COVID as it related to municipal operations, because we're geared towards being operational 24/7, and we have to be. That's the nature of our business. But that's certainly not what was felt, by everybody else. We went through some struggles with having many outbreaks go through several departments. We did rack up, a significant amount of overtime, both with fire, EMS, police, just as they were needing to respond to the crisis as it was happening in those early months of the outbreak.
And and that was critically important too, that as we talk about public safety, that from a municipal perspective, both your EMS, your fire, and your police were on call 24/7 in the midst of all of this, and just want to applaud them and the city of Humble for what you all did to kind of keep them intact and keep them safe with that. So Adam, from your perspective, kind of what did you see in 2019 or not 2019, but I'm sorry, 2020 in terms of the pandemic, and what impacts were most meaningful to you that you saw?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting because I feel like this was the first time. I mean, we've had times that it's been a landlord market, a seller's market, tenants market, but this was the first time that everyone was in the same boat together on this. And, businesses immediately closed down, so they were losing their revenue, which in turn, they were looking to the landlords to help them out to reduce their rent or abate rent or defer it. And then if the landlords did that, they had to be looking to their lenders who have the loans for their property to help them defer or abate their principal and interest on their loan. So it truly was the first 2 months of the pandemic. I was just on conference calls with tenants, landlords, and lenders and all the attorneys trying to figure this out. And really everyone, for the most part, really did work together to try and make it as manageable as possible, where not everyone was going under immediately. So it really was a situation where it was tough, where everyone across the board was losing revenue for those first couple of months until you could kind of figure out what was really coming with the pandemic and how long this was lasting for. Was PPP, those loans, going to come into play to help out tenants? Mm-hmm. So it really was a tough 2 months for everyone, but this is probably the only time I've seen everyone working together, because you really had to, or everyone was going to go under together.
Right. And I mean, that was critically important in delaying, if not even averting, business closures, right? Because we know from a retailer perspective that the business retail environment was hit relatively hard in terms of the mask orders, the mandatory shutdowns, and the reduced occupancy levels. So that kind of trifecta of partnerships probably averted some closures too, as you kind of looked at those different elements as well.
Correct.
Yeah, cool. And then John, you've got 4,200 acres over there, and I know you guys saw quite a few things. Talk about what you saw from a large developer perspective during 2020 and kind of that lens.
First and foremost, I want to apologize for y'all having to look at me from such a strange angle. I've been experiencing technical difficulties with the camera, and so now I am doing my first panel discussion off of an iPhone. So if you could only see my desk, which is stacked to get it high enough with pitch binders, all kinds of things, business cards under my iPhone stand to try to get it level. It's actually pretty hilarious. I wish I could.
That's all part of our creativity, right? We'll get to that.
Yeah. This is not my greatest angle. They always say pictures from high, right, as opposed to low. So no, it's always something. But 2020 was a challenging year for the commercial real estate market in Houston, Texas, other than really the industrial distribution front, the Amazons, the Lowe's, the Home Depots of the world, that really are reaping the kind of the benefits of the online kind of consumer market shift. Mm-hmm. Any of the large land sale transactions where there's going to be significant capital outlay, I mean, they just came to a screeching halt. If groups could utilize existing facilities as a stopgap while everything settled out with COVID and what the future held for those businesses, they did it. They did short-term renewals on leased facilities to get them through a year, 2 years. When you think about it, somebody coming in and buying a $10 million piece of land and putting up a $100 million building, if you can defer that while there's so much uncertainty in the world, you do it. So from a land sale perspective, everything did come to a screeching halt. The good news is that in the last 2 months, and I'm guessing Adam has seen it, activity behind folks getting more willing to spend significant construction dollars, it's really gotten pretty robust. I think you're seeing the stimulus packages at play, kind of the end of this first round of COVID. Hopefully, we're not on a second round. On a variety of reports out there with these new strains.
Right.
But it's I'm glad things appear to be looking up right now, and we're getting a lot more busy at Generation Park. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the cool thing is as you mentioned that we'll talk about that in a lot more in depth as we kind of go through the presentation. And lastly, just and it kind of John and I's worlds correlate quite a bit in terms of the commercial, industrial, and office development aspect, because a lot of the leads that we get from either the state of Texas or the Greater Houston Partnership, they essentially, after February of 2020, it just dried up just about completely. There were probably 4 or 5 months where we got no communication in terms of deal flow, and companies just weren't of the appetite to make those big CapEx decisions as they push forward. So John and I are seeing a lot of the same things in terms of the economic development front, and we'll dig in a little bit deeper as we kind of push forward with here. But again, we know the impacts were obvious. We had regular emails from small businesses trying to figure out how to keep their doors open, and we'll talk a little bit about what we did in terms of that response here. But again, you see these 3 different and actually 4 different lenses and perspectives in terms of the impact. And so it was broad, it was deep, and it was very significant. So with that, we'll push to the next slide and really talk about our pandemic response as an area. And I think the prior slide that talked about our strategic partnerships being there and being built and allowing us to move forward on so many different fronts so quickly. And the easy thing for me was to be able to do the tax webinars, the business credit webinars. We had done several of those post Harvey in terms of employment retention credit and other federal credits that were out there, and the SBA programs. So we really didn't miss a beat with the SBA and with our local lenders and with our sponsors locally to be able to get out PPP webinars, to get out federal employment tax credit webinars in a very, very quick way. We responded in terms of PPP forgiveness. We have responded in terms of how do you secure them the first go round. So from that perspective, from a partnership like Houston lens, those partnerships really helped us kind of push forward. And you'll see some other pictures on there. One day we were with Mayor Pro Tem Martin's staff and gave out over 1,000 masks relative to keeping people safe in terms of the mask wearing. We participated in a Texas A&M business survey in terms of impact of the coronavirus. And then, John, I'll ask you to speak to the 2 pictures to the right and the work that McCord Development and Generation Park did in terms of you guys' food drives. And also, Jason, I'm going to tap you to talk about your COVID response for employees and others as well. But John, that one picture to the middle on the right is a very compelling shot. If you can kind of speak to what you guys did those couple of weekends, that would be great.
Yeah, so it was interesting as COVID was becoming real in the April timeframe. The leadership team at McCord, we set out to see what we could do in terms of community give back. We knew that a lot of folks would be struggling, and we were in a position to help. One of those was in relation to the unemployment, the needs for food. And there's always a need for food, which is what we've learned through this process. So there was a government program called Farmers to Families that was part of the stimulus package, the initial round of the stimulus package. And essentially, the government went to the farmers and bought all their produce and meat products that weren't going to the restaurants. They weren't going to the universities, the school systems. And so the government bought those, and then they partnered with local municipalities and nonprofits to distribute that product to the community in need. So we partnered in Farmers to Families, and we did 3 food drives at Generation Park. I've got some quick stats for you. We served a little over 2,200 families. 8,000 individuals, and that was with 45,000 pounds of produce and 6,600 gallons of milk. And what was cool was seeing all the volunteer support. When we went and looked at other food drives happening across the city, the main concern was getting volunteer support. But in our community, that was like the one concern we didn't have. Every food drive was oversubscribed in terms of volunteers, but we had, anywhere from 30 to 50 at every single food drive. And we're just struggling to find things for people to do, which is in a good position to be in. And it was telling for our community that they came out in droves to support. Everyone was looking to help. So the food drives, that was something that was really positive that came out of COVID. I think probably as an organization, we got more out of it, and we were giving to the people in our community that needed the food. In terms of just, I don't know, you feel good, right? Giving back. You were out there. Jenna was out there. It brought things to the forefront of how fortunate a lot of us are on this call and in this community. And that the pandemic was very real at that point for all of us. So
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the most compelling thing to me is just that the shot of all the cars, and for all of you looking at that essentially wraps around from where Generation Park's office building is all the way to Beltway 8. So that was just a sea of cars. And I think one day there was like 800 or 900 that we served, right? And so it just showed how deep the pandemic hit so many different people. And there were everything from beaters to Lexus to Mercedes that were pulling through. And the pandemic did not discriminate. It impacted everyone. And then, Jason, one of the things that we talked about earlier that I thought was really neat is what the city of Humboldt did in terms of your vaccination and your infection control staff, and what you all have done here over the past few months and most recent weeks in terms of not only making sure that your public servants are safe, but kind of reaching out beyond that as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we've really come full circle on this from the very beginning. When we were, first it was doing mask drives and giving out masks at the Civic Center and having long lines of cars for masks. And then, we partnered with Harris County Public Health and with Precinct 4, and then we started the testing, the drive-through testing at the Civic Center, and now to come to the point where we're actually able to provide vaccines, not just for our first responders and our employees, but also now over the last few weeks, we've received several shipments of the J&J vaccine, and we have been putting shots in arms of those that meet the criteria of 1A, 1B, and 1C, and we have been rolling through those relatively quickly, but we'll continue to do that. Every week, basically, our staff is applying for additional vaccine allocation, and then as they come online, we do our best to get it out there into the community as soon as possible. So, as that becomes available, I would be looking for that opportunity from the city of Humboldt. And like I said, we're going to continue doing that because we've made a commitment. From our staff and our infection control office and our fire and our EMS personnel and all of our first responders that we are committed to getting this vaccine out and distributed as soon as it becomes available.
Yeah, and that's fantastic in terms of just making that connection in the community. And Adam, I'm going to put you on the spot in terms of you literally are out dealing as tenant rep, owner's rep, and you're seeing all these different relationships as they transpire, and the fact that you're dealing with the tenant, the landlord, the lenders. What unique things have you seen from kind of a business to business perspective where they've helped each other out in terms of the pandemic over the past response?
Yeah, and I alluded to it earlier, but again, this was really the first time I've seen all parties working together on it. Now, you had your tenants that, occupy 2 floors of a building, and clearly they have a lot of weight in discussions with those landlords. But by the same means, those landlords want to keep the tenants. An option is very well for a lot of people, and retail specifically was hit harder, but Chapter 11, Chapter 13 bankruptcies, those were all very viable options for tenants in these situations. So landlords it was in their interest to work with the tenants, and by the same means, it was in the interest of the lenders to work with the landlords to help them out. So, I mean, there were a lot of situations that I saw, and I'll just mention an industry that you wouldn't think typically would have been hit too hard, but dry cleaners. It was one that kind of surprised me, because immediately people are doing their Zoom calls in their pajamas, and you no longer need to have your clothes pressed or, dry cleaned. So they were immediately hit by, some of these, it was 60% across the board overnight. They lost their revenue by 60%. And so there was a lot of creativity done to keep some of those chains open and able to keep paying rent. And a lot of that was kind of staggered rents, which were based upon a percentage of the sales that they had, just to help through that time until they could get back on their feet. Because people prepare for, a couple of locations to do poorly here and there, but to have just across the board, 60% or more revenue cut immediately, hardly anyone's preparing for that.
Right.
And so there did have to be a lot of creativity just between, three major parties, the tenants, the landlords, and the lenders, to try and to make it through these times. Right.
And I mean, and that's a great segue. And you mentioned creativity a couple of times, and I'm gonna keep kind of the line of questioning going with you. So as we're looking forward now, and what we've seen over the past several months, we have seen businesses have to figure things out and have to work through things. And one of the things that you brought up to me was kind of this anomaly of people being chained to their homes now. They're not making that drive to downtown or the Galleria, but there were also some areas where you saw some really significant upticks. And that first one is, it kind of speaks to executive leasing. Can you talk to what you've seen in that realm in terms of the creativity aspect of it and kind of pushing forward?
Yeah, so you had a shift probably, 2018 going forward, where people who had traditional executive suites, that's just, you've got your four walls and a door and you lease out an individual office. Everything was moving away from that concept to this, open air, open concept, collaborative workspaces, whether it's WeWorks and Spaces, or just a company having more of a bullpen and collaborative layout for their office. That immediately changed with COVID. And so things have actually kind of taken a step back and gone back more to, hey, people are now working from home. They're not going downtown. Do you really want to be, I know for myself, I have two boys at home. As soon as I was able to get out of the house, I was out of there. And so I think a lot of people are in that same situation where companies, they saw that two areas that they could save the most on was travel. And, that's where Zoom really took off, and Google Teams or Microsoft Teams, all that. But also rent was an area that they could save a lot of money. So people were working from home, and then when they started realizing that, hey, we're going to be here for a while, and some people were very productive, others were not, given the home environment. So we have seen a major shift in a lot of individuals looking to lease out a single office space, where they can have a conference room, they've got a receptionist, but they've just got their four walls up, and they can kind of lock themselves in their office and do their work without kids running around, and still have some interaction. Because I think that's, one of the things that people have missed out on a lot during COVID is just still being able to have some interaction with people. So I think that this was a way to do it safely, but also make people in certain situations more productive.
Right. And I just thought that was a fascinating lens, because I'm that way as well. My wife has been working from home since last February, and so we both can't work from home together, right? So you need to find those alternatives, right? And then John, one of the things I thought was interesting in terms of McCord and Generation Park is that you guys kind of doubled down on your master planning and trail development. Talk about that a little bit in terms of what you guys decided to do.
Yeah, so we took it as an opportunity to take a step back, and we were moving so fast, getting a lot of transactions done, that our master planning, while we're always consumed with it, we hadn't taken the time to just say, hey, are we doing it right? Are we still understanding what the market wants here in the Lake Houston area and in the region? So one of the items that we have seen that people gravitate towards at Generation Parks, the West Lake. I mean, the West Lake's our 19-acre amenity lake. If you go out, I mean, today at 9 a.m., there are probably 30 cars there and a number of folks walking and jogging on the lake. People like parks, they like trails. So we have undergone a complete redo of our trail network within Generation Park. Mm-hmm. We now have a 4-mile trail that we are constructing currently. Some will be through sidewalks, some will be through the woods on asphalted trails. But that is in the works. We have worked on additional amenity lake features as part of a new parcel of land that we acquired off of Lockwood Road, just kind of to the south west of FMC Technologies track. So in terms of bringing that amenity set, the park set, the kind of natural parks feel to Generation Park, we're really focused on that right now. Mm-hmm. And COVID's been helpful having the time to get that refined.
All right, got awesome. And then Jason too, as we've partnered on several deals or whatever, you see a couple on there that are City of Humble. You'll see the one to the left, the lower left, that's actually the Calera property that we partnered with Jackson Shaw on and redid the road and everything. And then the right side, upper right side is a spec building that's going in now. If anything, I want to talk about the Jackson Shaw piece and them moving forward in the midst of this, and we're still talking about creativity. And then just, I'd like to remind everybody to just speak to the partnership that the city had with Jackson Shaw. And it was kind of in the heart of the pandemic, making sure that we were able to get a deal broker that made sense. And we've ended up, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in the next slide, but we ended up with some great outcomes in terms of everybody being progressive, moving forward, and confident about the Lake Houston area and specifically the City of Humble. If you want to just speak to that Jackson Shaw property at all.
Yeah, no, that was a win-win situation where we had always had anticipated the need that Rankin Road, which is what fronts their property, would need to be a 4-lane boulevard and to handle the increased traffic load as that develops out. And we had already had the engineering in progress for the balance of Rankin Road from the railroad tracks to South Houston. And so when along came Jackson Shaw, they needed a building there. They wanted to move quickly. We knew that there were going to be capacity issues for transportation, for truck traffic and car traffic. And so really we came to an agreement with them, and they met us halfway, and we were able to split that cost down the middle, utilize their ability to have their contractors do the job with the concrete that they already had there on site. And we were able to actually save, I think, both sides a significant amount of money by allowing that to happen.
Right.
And it was just a good deal all around. And it was probably, if not the first, certainly one of the first true economic development deals that this city has ever proactively participated in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I mean, and it's still bearing fruit for us, right? And so, So quickly, I'll talk about the couple of bullet points that are still up there. And one of these is a direct conversation with Adam, and I just thought it was fascinating in terms of the increased level of activity in terms of fitness and dining in the suburbs as the inner loop kind of turned into a ghost town. We've seen kind of a heightened participation and activation in the fitness and dining piece, and Adam and I kind of talked about that in detail. The other thing I just want to mention too is creativity around your business platform. So we know that retailers were hit particularly hard in terms of the pandemic, but a lot of them were able to pivot so quickly and so smoothly. to e-commerce and curbside pickup framework. So you've got Deerbrook Mall that actually did that for the whole mall. And so on that lower level, they had it set up, and Jason and I were talking about this, where it was just a drive-through. You do your orders, and then you can drive through that lower level and pick up your online purchases. And then the same thing with restaurants and the like, where they've figured out how to shift towards an e-commerce platform and curbside pickup and online purchasing. And so again, lots of businesses had to be really creative, kind of pushing forward from that dynamic. And so with all this said, in terms of creativity, we'll talk a little bit about the growth that's going on in the midst of all of this. And then John's mentioned this already, but if you'd speak to John, the fact that we're seeing this uptick in industrial and commercial activity in terms of large development.
Did you want Adam to go here or me?
Who did I say?
I think initially it was maybe an Adam discussion, and then now
I'll let you do it, John. I'll let you take it
go
over.
ahead, John. You
All right.
Volunteer.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. So obviously, online purchasing has increased substantially as a result of COVID. I think that I read some stats that maybe 13% of retail purchases were made online pre-pandemic, and now it's 16, 17%. And so even that small little, to us, seems like small little fraction, it's a substantial need for warehousing as a result of that. Amazon, for example, they've grown their real estate footprint alone in 2020, or really the second half of 2020, by 50%. So, and there's no signs of slowing down. So there's going to be a pretty good run, and you're already seeing it in Houston, really, with Amazon, but you have had Lowe's and Home Depot and some other large retailers come in and take down large tracts of land to reach, this population base of the MSA. I mean, some regional distribution's done out of these locations, but for the most part, they're serving the MSA, and they need massive amounts of square footage. So you'll continue to see that product type grow. For large landowners, that's attractive. But one of the challenges is it doesn't bring in a ton of employment unless it's something super specialized. But as automation increases in these buildings, there's less the need for an employment. So it's it's great because it's bringing in value, which I know Jason sees. But on the other side, you wish they could bring in a few more employees as well. But we're seeing some very good activity there right now at Generation Park.
Right. And then Jason, talk a little bit about the changing dynamics. You mentioned the downside early in the pandemic, but talk about what lens you've got right now in terms of the rebound for revenues, tax collection revenues on the rise.
Yeah, if there's anything that the last 3 or 4 years have taught us, whether it was a Harvey or a Melda, or going back even further, Tax Day, Memorial Day, Winter Storm Uri, now a pandemic, is that we've sort of learned and programmed ourselves to understand how to bounce back. And typically when we do come back a little bit stronger than we entered those individual circumstances. And so, yeah, we're seeing that right now, as we work through those first 3 months of the shutdown, it was bad. And then, I think society learned to adjust. We learned what social distancing meant. We learned how important, masks were, and we learned how to exist in the new normal as it became in June and then through the summer and fall of last year. And then, starting to get hope and light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines becoming available. And so what we've seen is really since June, and since that abysmal decline in retail activity that we saw, we actually ended the year only down 3% in 2020, calendar year 2020, compared to 2019, which, that's a victory. If you would have told me on March 11th, 2020, that you would only be down 3% for the year. From a sales tax perspective, I would have told you were a liar. But even to now, if you look at the rolling month to month from June to this month, we're actually up 3%, and
Wow.
in January sales were actually up 10%. So it's coming back. Retail activity is coming back in a big way, and hopefully that will continue. It gives me some hope at least.
And then Jason, can you attribute that to businesses being more adept at kind of pivoting to these different platforms? Because we know that there have been reduced occupancy levels for the majority of the past 14 months. And so it sounds like these businesses have really figured out how to be robust in this kind of new e-commerce curbside pickup platform for you to, again, I think that's amazing that for everything that we've gone through, for you to only be down 3%, I really think that speaks to the intellect and creativity of those business owners, right? To kind of figure out how to keep revenue coming through the door.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my hat's off, and I've praised the folks at the mall and Carlos and his crew. I don't think that curbside and online ordering and in-store pickup is a new thing. Even back in 2020, I mean, we've been doing it. It had been available to us, for years before that. But that was only a small fraction of any retailer's, gross sales. And so to completely transition from brick and mortar to transition an entire mall from brick and mortar to curbside delivery and the type of operation that they had, and they got up and running in pretty short order and learning how to adapt to that. That's incredible stuff right there. And my hat's off to them.
That's neat. And Adam, as you're looking at the list, we've got companies from all over Lake Houston. We've got them as far south as Generation Park and north, and we've got quite a few in the Humble area as well. And we've got new medical office spaces being planned right now. So as you're looking at the environment from a commercial, industrial, and commercial and office leasing perspective, including retail, kind of what are some of those stories in spite of that you can kind of speak to about companies that have figured out how to keep pushing forward in the midst of all of this?
Yeah, I think Jason had alluded to it in there on, to go order. It's not new. It's nothing that wasn't around prior to. But I think adopting new technology, there's a curve to it. I mean, I'm still the guy that has my Napster and burning CDs. And it's one of those to get the people to make the jump to a new, to Spotify and Amazon Music. It takes a while, or it takes a big push. And I think COVID really forced people to make that jump and the leap to start doing the HEB curbside pickup or Lowe's or wherever you're going for that, and to do, the ordering from restaurants on that DoorDash. And so a lot of the more mom and pop shops in the Lake Houston area, the ones that were able to really jump in, and like you said, I hate to use the word, but to pivot and really take that on quickly, I think that they did a tremendous job and were really able to keep their doors open and do that. And I think people really had to be more spontaneous and just kind of react to some of this and really take a leap of faith. People make decisions during the good times and they make decisions during the bad times. And I feel like COVID was this just unknown. People didn't really know what to do, and it almost froze a lot of people. And I think it took a lot of initiative for some of these mom and pop stores to really take that leap, to take on the new technology and to do some of that, to keep their doors open.
And I think too, and I'll add to that, and I think it's a testament to the business environment that we all work collectively to create in Lake Houston area, right? And so some of these companies, we've got Calera, Boca Italian, Gapco, JSL Foods, Service Wire. So these are all businesses that decided in spite of the current environment, they were going to move forward with us and make these financial decisions. Ironically now, so some of these companies that we've convinced to come here and make it home, now we're helping those companies respond in terms of vaccinations for their employees. And so, but that's where I think the Lake Houston area differentiates itself, because we are a full service community. We figure out how to help companies wherever they are along the spectrum. And I think that just speaks to the confidence those companies have. And that includes City of Humble and Gen Park. I mean, Boca is actually a company of McCord Development. And so they've made commitments to the Lake Houston area in terms of pushing forward. And I think that's just critically important in terms of the environment that we've created here pushing forward.
And Mark, and one thing I wanted to add on that real fast is that from what I've seen, I represent groups and landlords and tenants all over the Houston area, but I've seen a major shift in people who have been looking, in the downtown area, the Galleria, energy corridor. And a lot of that is starting to push more to the suburban markets. And in the slide previously, you mentioned, I know of a couple of larger fitness groups. They're starting to look in the suburban markets and closing down locations downtown because there's not the traffic for that anymore. Same with restaurants. I had a client of mine that had the opportunity to go into the Galleria, and ultimately we were getting a phenomenal deal down there, and we chose to not sign that lease. And we're looking at the suburban market because that's where all the individuals are now. And so I think the Lake Houston area is really in a good position to get some of that, because we haven't competed typically with your downtown. I think McCord is one of the few areas that has really made a product that is more like a gallery or a downtown area. And so I think that this area is really set up well for the next couple of years.
No, that's fantastic. And I mean, that's a great segue. We've already talked about the significant shift in tax collection. And what I'd like to do is kind of get all three of your perspectives on what you see, for now to the end of the year in terms of, what it's going to look like. And John, we'll start with you.
Well, kind of just taking a step back, we have had some success thus far since starting about July. Our activity started picking back up in terms of industrial leasing. We had a 125,000 square foot spec building in Generation Park called Lockwood Business Park 2. And we now have that building. It was 60% leased going into COVID, and then now it's 100% leased. So the lease product, and I think you're seeing that with Jackson Shaw stuff up in Humble as well, has been doing pretty well after, there was about a 4 or 5 months where it was not very good. But now if you have good product and a good environment, it's leasing. I mean, people are okay, executing long-term leases. One we did was for Unify Energy Solutions, and they do building automation. So they help buildings run more efficiently. And the cool thing about that deal is it's in an industrial flex building, but it's heavy office. So there'll be approximately 80, 90 high earning employees coming to Generation Park, and we're building out that space right now. So real excited about that. And then, as you mentioned, ServiceWire, they're building a little under 300,000 square feet. And it's the core and shell work on that building is complete, and they'll have 200 to 300 employees. So real grateful that they elected to continue with their construction project, and they're all in on Generation Park. Again, I see the next through 2021 as being very fruitful from a land sale standpoint as well. Coffers are full for a lot of these companies. They see light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, and they're gearing back up to these deferred capital projects. They now need to go, and they need to go fast. Right. And we're seeing the results of that and the deal flow. Within Redemption Square, where we have our restaurants, you mentioned Boca and Lupo, the uptick in diners has been significant over the last about month. So we're really optimistic there that people are in the Lake Houston area are wanting to get out more, are more comfortable with the protocols in place at different establishments, whether they're getting vaccinated, to many other different protocols. But the activity is picked up. We've had to have we've shifted some of our thought processes on office, like Adam mentioned. We are doing some executive suites in our corporate office building called Generation Works, which will be delivering in July of this year, 45 suites. And the activity, as Adam indicated, has been incredible. People looking to get out of the house. And we have 34 companies that are interested in a suite or more. Another just really cool case study is the salon suites. We just opened a Eden Salon Suites. That's a McCord owned product that has 19 suites in it. And it was one of our employees, our property manager, Nikki Hayden. She said, "Hey, I talked to a bunch of people who are looking for space to open salons, or what is this cold? They kind of do this cold treatment to get your fat off your body. Is it like sculpting,
right.
Of which the problem areas of which it's now just across the street. I'm thinking about giving it a go.
That was TMI, John.
yeah. So, I mean, it's been open for less than a month, and we have 18 of the 19 suites are spoken for. It's been amazing, this shift. So, I think we're in for a really good end of second half of 2021. There's $5 trillion going into the marketplace in some form or fashion. It's a lot of freaking money.
Good stuff.
Any way you look at it.
Yeah.
It's probably too much money, but not our problem, at least for the short term.
Right. And then Jason, from a municipal perspective, what are you seeing till the end of 2021?
I'm shaking my magic 8 ball, and it's telling me too soon to tell. Just because we're getting so used to having these curveballs thrown at us. I don't want to be too optimistic, but no, I'd second everything that John just said. I think we're gearing up for a pretty successful year. And I know it's cliche, but there's light at the end of the tunnel finally.
Right.
And I think that's improving the confidence of the consumer.
Right.
So I think we're primed and ready for a good year, but who knows what's going to happen next.
Right.
And I don't want to, Jason's comments of being kind of cautiously optimistic, I think, are wise.
Right.
I have, you hear through reliable sources about different strains of COVID, and I don't want to be an alarmist, but I've heard through some very senior level infectious disease folks that it's very real, the new strains of COVID and how contagious they are, that we're better prepared to handle it, but there are going to be some setbacks.
Right.
And
I think that's part of why we've got it. Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like, but I think there is a chance it could be significant.
Right.
I hope not. I think we all are just ready for it to be over, but we can't lose sight of it's not over.
Right.
And so that's sorry to kind of take over the call there for a second, but it's real. I think there's some real headwinds still.
Right. And we'll speak to that before we close out too. And then Adam, just for you, what's your magic wand or crazy 8 saying in terms of 2021?
Yeah, so it's actually January was very slow, and we got hit, I think, by 3 things. You got hit in 2020, you had oil drop, you had COVID, and then you had an election year. And for our industry, an election year, it's always slower because the unknown of what's going to happen, tax implications, things like that. And February on, it's just been blowing and going. I mean, the phones, I put it on do not disturb because it rings off the hook. So, I mean, we really have had a whole lot of activity, pick up a number of land, like John was saying, and buildings that have gone under contract. So people are spending money. People are looking to make decisions now. So, make hay while the sun shines.
All right. Awesome. And then,
and Mark, really quick, that's really telling what Adam just touched upon is, I mean, in the midst of 2020, we went through an oil bust, a big oil bust, and in Texas, and it didn't hardly even make the radar. I mean,
Right.
the psyche of a lot of the things that were going on and the decisions that we were making, and here it's almost just a comment in passing. So
Right.
that tell you right there how significant this last year has just been and how it's just screwy.
And I think in addition to that too, I think it's a good indication of how we're beginning to lever away from oil and gas. We're becoming more diversified where that was just a blip on the radar, and we're talking more about our logistics, our healthcare, our other office headquarter type operations. And so there has been this slow kind of de-evolution, if you will, in terms of our dependence on oil and gas. And again, we're still the energy capital of the world, but we're becoming a more diverse market, right? And so I think that's all kind of added on top of that too. And so, gentlemen, truly appreciate your participation in this afternoon. The closing slide for us is just stay the course. We know that there have been retail and service companies that have been really, really hard hit during the COVID-19 pandemic. The stimulus packages have helped out significantly. We know we still got a long way to go, but I think we also still need to heed our healthcare professionals' advice. Get your shot. And essentially the advice I've been given is it doesn't matter whether it's Moderna, Pfizer, or Johnson & Johnson, whichever one you can get the soonest, get it. We need to get as close to herd immunity as we can, as quickly as we can. I think you've heard from all three panelists that we're cautiously optimistic about this second half of the year. And I'm the same way in terms of economic development. We've seen a fairly significant uptick in project activities. And I think businesses, for the most part, are seeing the economy begin to stabilize and make them more comfortable in terms of making those big capital budget decisions. So all in all, I think we're in a very good space. I think we'll see a very robust 2021, all things considered. I think we need to kind of take heed to John's comments about the variant strains that are out there, and we still need to continue our masking and social distancing the best that we can. Still need to buy locally as much as we can and be respectful of those business owners and the decisions that they've had to make pushing forward. Gentlemen, again, thank you. And then we'll stay on for a couple of minutes just from a Q&A perspective, and I'll just, we'll leave the lines open for a little bit. But Terry Vaughn, thank you very much for your warm introduction, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you, sir. Thank you.
Great information, guys. Adam, Jason, and John, thank you all for being with us today. And that concludes our luncheon today. I'd like to recognize our sponsors one last time. Co-presenting sponsors, Frost Construction Company and Shell Federal Credit Union. Gold sponsors, First Financial Bank and Lake Houston Family YMCA. Silver sponsors, Plain State Bank and Sullivan's Truck Auto Collision. And today's bronze sponsor, ASI Signs, Systems, and Rocos LLC. Thank you all for joining us today. If you have not yet signed up for the next month's Kingwood BizCom on April 8th, you can do so at lakehouston.org. And don't forget to register for next month's Luncheon's Teachers of the Year on April 27th as we recognize our educators that have gone above and beyond throughout this pandemic. Thank you for joining us and have a great afternoon.